Hey everybody, so today we're going to look at a shot I did for our Cox Conserves Awards. I work for a media company called Cox, spelled C-O-X. So every year Cox gives away what it basically amounts to a grant to local people who are doing good things for the environment. And we run a bunch of promos on it and we get a whole bunch of entries. And the winners actually will get a sizable amount of money that they can use for their environmental project. So this is the opening shot to the promo. We shot this with a Panasonic P2 ENG camera. Nothing fancy, no crazy color space, just a Rec 709 color space. But we did use a slider. So let's take a look at this shot. We shot this on our cinema slider. This is Kevin Lemanowitz, our chief meteorologist. We shot this in Uxbridge, Massachusetts in I believe it was a state park. Not a lot of snap to this shot. It's a little washed out, not much going on. We can look down here on the scopes, and this shot is definitely pushing towards yellow. A lot of that yellow is in this path, but also a lot of yellow is in this wood here. But there's also quite a bit of yellow in the trees. And this is what I wanted to demonstrate today, how to really make foliage pop. So in the first node, all I did was bring down our highlights. You can see here we've got some clipping in our highlights. We've got a lot of red and a lot of yellow. Not that much going on in the blacks. We can probably crunch those blacks a little bit down. And that's what I did in the first node. Brought down my highlights, brought down my blacks. Let's take a look at the second node. Now we're getting somewhere. I made this a little more punchy. So in this node, because it's a little graph right here, I brought down my blacks. You see, and I pinned the whites right here because I didn't want this to happen. Look at the scopes. Those whites are getting too high, too white. So I pinned them there and I brought up these highlights just a little bit. You can see because I've pinned it right here, it's not moving the high highlights because it's pinned here, but look at these highlights right here. See how they're moving, but the highlights at the top aren't? This is giving me a little more brightness on the top end of things, but it's not blowing out my highlights. So that exposure now is looking pretty good. My blacks are nice and crunchy. My midtones are high. My highlights aren't blown out. I've got some punch in this shot. Let me turn it off. That's what we started with. And just with 2 exposure nodes, basically, I've gotten it to here. Now, let's take a look at node 3. What I've done in this node is I've made those greens really pop. So you can see the difference off, on, off, on. Look at the scopes. That's off, kind of yellowy, not that green, that's on. I'm definitely pushing more towards green. That foliage is really popping off of there. And I did that by hue versus hue. This sounds a little counterintuitive because it's green. You'd think you'd want to spin the green hue around, but you don't. You want to make the yellow in that picture more green, which is what this is doing. I'll show you an extreme example. Okay, now it's blue, right? Not so good looking. And now it's pink. But this is where it lived normally, right in the middle. And all I've done is bring it down a little bit, like that. And now my greens are a lot punchier. So if we turn this node off and back on again, I've turned all the yellows green, which is great. Except for one very important part. I don't want to make the yellows in this wood green. So let's take a look at our alpha channel. All I did was qualify that yellow. I'm going to play it down. So it's a bit rough. The key is a bit rough, but that's okay because it's keeping that yellow in there and you don't really see it when you're playing it down. Looks okay. But if you turn the key off, it would look like that. See how all that yellow wood now looks green? Let me undo that. By keying it out, I'm keeping it yellow, which is what we want. Now, if we look at the alpha channel, there was a problem area with this foliage. This hill, because it's New England in June with no rain, that hill, if you look at the original footage, is kind of yellow and disgusting. There's just a lot of dead grass on there. And when I color correct it, now it looks even worse. So what I've done is I tracked this shape to that hill. So this yellow adjustment is not affecting inside this area at all. What I did was I took this shape, came down here, I copied my window, and then I copied my track data, and I pasted it on this node, and then I blurred the outside. So if I turn this node on, I get this. I also keyed the yellow part. So you can see it's just that patch of burnt up ground. And what I was able to do was come in here and do a hue versus hue. Now this is a more extreme hue versus hue than this node. This is the trees here. Node 3. Node 4 is the inside, but it's more extreme. Let me turn that node on and let's take a look. Boom. That foliage is now all pretty green. So that's off. Very brown, very nasty, very disgusting, and that's on. And when I play this down, you can see that area is now green. Let me turn that node off. Now that hill is kind of brown and disgusting. See the difference? On, off, on, off. Let me leave that on. I'll go through the rest of them pretty quick. This node, number 12, was the sky. All I did was put some more blue in it, and I brought the gain down a little bit, so that's off. Washed out sky, kind of white, kind of nasty, not much there. Sky on. Blued it up, play that down. Looking pretty good. Let's look at the matte channel. Looks pretty good. Subtle adjustment, but it's better than that. So here in node 4, I'm looking at the image, and the trees are greener, but the whole thing still looks kind of yellow. So what I did in node 4 was, with my highlights, you can see in the vector scope, I pushed my highlights in my midtones more towards the magenta. Don't be afraid of magenta. That's off. Kind of yellowy, kind of pea greeny, kind of hazy looking. Look at the scopes. Everything is pushing to yellow and green. Now you'd expect it to push to green because of all these green trees. But this yellow area here, not looking so good. You want your blob, usually, unless it's an extreme circumstance, you want your blob to emanate from the middle. So watch what happens when I turn node 4 on. It's now pushed up towards magenta, and the picture looks less hazy. It looks less pea, soupy, greeny, yellowy. Off, on, off, on. You can also see in the waveform what's happening. That's off. A lot of yellow up there, a lot of red up there. Our blue channel's way down there. I brought the gammas and the gains towards magenta, and you can see it's taken out a lot of that yellow from that picture. So this shot was really two parts, if you think about it. We've got this bridge here, and this is my script. Yeah, sometimes I like to get in the shot. I'm just going to blow that up in the Avid when we put it all back together. But we've got the first part of the shot here, which is now looking pretty good. Now we can work on the second part of the shot, which is our talent here. So the first thing is, this looks like a big black hole back here, like this guy's walking into Mordor here. That's probably not going to be too good for our promo. So what I did was here in node 6, I brightened it up. What I did was I made a mask, as you can see. I tracked it to those trees, heavily blurred the outside, you can see here, and all I did was bring my gain up in that part of the shot. So let's go back to here. So that's off, and that's on. So I've just brightened up this black hole back here in the back of the picture. No shot would be complete without adjusting our talent's skin. I pulled a key on Kevin here. Rough key. You can see all the compression in the P2 footage. It is a rough key, but when I'm looking at it, it's looking okay. There's a lot of compression in this shot. All I did was brighten them up a little bit. I brought the gain and the gamma up ever so slightly. And this one was Kevin's shirt. I keyed it. I just basically brought it up a little bit. I thought I was going to have to play around with it, but it's looking pretty good. I moved the gain up ever so slightly on this shot, but I mean, if you really stare at it, off, on, made it a little brighter, a little more saturation, but not much. We didn't have a lighting kit strong enough to fight the sun on this one. So what I did was I drew a mask around Kevin and tracked it. You can see doing this. And all I've done with that shot is I brought up the gamma and the gain. Off, on, off, on. Literally just brightening up where Kevin's standing. And it's hard to tell because this shot isn't playing back in real time. But one of the nice things about using a slider is you get a really steady, even, consistent shot. So tracking things is not that hard. So you can see Kevin's kind of dark there. Where are you, Kev? Can't see you. There we go. Brighten him up a little bit. And finally, the last node was I came in and I kind of crunched down my mid-tone curve here. This is off and this is on. It's just giving a little bit more contrast and punch in the mid-tones of that picture. Off, on, off, on. So that's where we started from. A little bit washed out. I mean, it was kind of a hazy day. Not a lot of pop in that shot. Not a lot of oomph in that shot. It's not really jumping out off the screen at us like a promo should. Now, again, nothing wrong with this shot. Our cameraman did a great job photographing it. The slider gave it some parallax, made it look kind of neat. But it's about the environment. The spot is about the environment. I want to make this thing just pop right off the screen at you. So that's where we started from, and here's where we ended up. Not a really complicated shot, not a really complicated color correction. So these are some very simple techniques that I use all the time when we're shooting stuff in a forest or when there's a lot of green and we really want that green to pop off. So I hope this tutorial helped you guys. I'm trying to keep them shorter. I do tend to prattle on. I love talking about me. I'll show you the promo at the end. And happy correcting, everybody.
Whether it's a park, trail, pond, or beach, there's a volunteer working to improve the great outdoors where you live. Help us recognize them. Boston 25 and the Trust for Public Land are teaming up to honor environmental volunteers. One local winner will receive $10,000 for their favorite environmental nonprofit. Then move on to compete at the national level for an additional $50,000. Nominate your environmental hero. Learn more about the Cox Conserves Heroes Awards at boston25news.com. Nominate a volunteer through July 31st.